This is Wheelbearings. I'm Dan Roth.
I'm Sam Abul-Samad.
I'm Rebecca Lindland.
All right, welcome to episode 103. We've got the cars up first, and so we've got a big truck. Sam, you're driving the Nissan Titan Pro4X.
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 Yes.
And we've got a tiny car. I've got the 2019 Hyundai Kona Ultimate, and then in between, Rebecca, you've got the 2019 Volvo V60, and you also braved Manhattan in a Ram. And so we'll talk about that, and then we'll also talk about Lincoln is teasing us with the Corsair, so kind of going the opposite direction of Cadillac with alphanumerics. They're bringing back names and Edsel names, so that's great. Geely might save smart, and then Europe is passing more draconian measures for socialist drivers. So they want mandatory driver assistance. But anyway, we'll get back to the cars. You know what? Because we talked about the Volvo V60 last week, so let's sort of follow up with it after a week now, because you'd only had it like a day.
Right.
Is it still, what do we call it? Lovely? Is it still lovely?
It is lovely. However, I'm continuing to have issues with what I realized was really the calibration. I don't like when I put it into dynamic mode specifically. It revs really high. It fights that. It's not a pleasant experience. I did it again today. I went on the highway with it today, and I put it into dynamic mode, and I just don't enjoy it. And then I realized that even in comfort mode, I don't know, it's just not for me. I think which is disappointing, because I love the vehicle, and I described it. I was telling my sister about it today, and I described it. I said it's like when you meet somebody and they're beautiful, they're kind, they're loving, they're kind of all these things that you want somebody to be, and they have this awful voice that you have to try and overlook. You want to compensate for it because you like everything else about them. But that's a pretty critical feature. That's how I feel about this Volvo V60 T6.
So it's kind of it's a silent film star.
Exactly.
It's like Rudolph Valentino or something.
Exactly. It's like as long
they
as
they have great moves on the dance floor. They can be incredibly expressive with their face as they're going through these scenes. But as soon as you introduce the talkie, it all falls apart.
That was like one of the sort of plot arcs of Singing in the Rain, right? Anyway. So the car itself, so dynamic mode is a dud, but even comfort mode isn't really what you want, I guess.
It's just not for me. And what's so interesting is that back in the summertime, I had the XC40, the small crossover, which is adorable. I love it. I love the looks of it. But after a week, I was like, okay, here you go. You can have that back. Thank you very much. It just... And so I don't know if, again, it's just the way that the engine is calibrates. It's the way that it moves through the gears. I don't like the high revving, the RPM settings. It's just not for me. And again, it's just incredibly disappointing, because I do think it's such a beautiful vehicle. I love driving around in a wagon. I feel like such a little rebel in it.
I don't know. So part of it might be that it is a press car, and so it's been abused by everybody who's going to drive it. Some of the adaptive transmissions and stuff, they learn. But they tend to learn pretty quick too. So I don't know if it's that so if even in comfort mode it's not sort of as smooth as you would like.
Yeah, I mean it's only got 3,000 miles on it.
Yeah,
and so
because I found that the S60 I had really grew on me after a week. So and the XC40 was just charming from the get go. So, and maybe it's just, it's one of those it's not you, it's me situations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Honestly, that's exactly how I feel. It's like it's not you. This is just me. And as I was driving around today, really thinking about it, really concentrating and focusing on how I interacted with this vehicle, I want to love it. I really do. And I just don't. but it's not. It is totally me. I can't even say. I could never tell somebody, I don't think you'll be happy with it, because I think somebody else will be thrilled with it. It's and there's so many things to love about the vehicle that and even I was even paying attention again to the. What's the technology system called?
Census.
The census. Yes, yeah. Thank you. And I have no problems with that whatsoever. I mean, I found everything I needed to find. I was able to adjust whatever I needed. The radio.
Oh, that's so interesting.
I know, right?
Because Sam will attest. I have endlessly bitched about that system.
As have I.
And it's so funny because I always tell people, if you need technology broken, I am your girl. I can break it for you. And yet this is just something that was completely intuitive to me. Maybe it's my Norwegian blood coming out. but it's completely intuitive to me, which is so funny because I know other people don't like it. But yeah, so again, I just, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful vehicle. I really liked the census system and didn't have any problem. I like the blind spot monitoring. I played around a lot with the lane keep assist. Even that was not annoying. It's a comfortable vehicle. It looks great. And I really it's just the calibration that I'm just not comfortable with.
Okay. I mean, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Perfectly legitimate opinion. And as you said, there are other people who would probably like it. I'll be curious to see, when we've had a chance to try it, how we feel about it. Because we often do have differing opinions on stuff. And I'll be curious to see if it's something that was unique to the car you were driving, or if there, who knows? I mean, there might be a transmission issue with that one, or who knows what's going on.
Yeah,
or the lead sneakers.
Yeah,
and again, I think it's because I was thinking about that, and because I didn't fall in love with the XC40 either, like I expected to. I want to. I do think it maybe just is me. I think it's just me.
And that's that's why we have a choice. I mean, that's
why there's hundreds of different vehicles available on the market. So
right,
you can find the right one for your that suits you better.
As long as you don't want a sedan or a hatchback or a wagon with a stick shift or something.
Right.
Yeah,
but something crazy like that.
I mean, it'll. So now, what I'm curious is if every Volvo is going to sort of do the same thing. It's going to be really nice, nice to look at, lovely design, but it will fall short in terms of driving impressions just because they're consistent.
I know. I'm very, very curious to see getting into another one, and I'm going to check and see what's in the fleet. Because I do want to see.
Have you driven the XC60?
I have not. I'll tell you, I have not driven the XC60. Years ago, I drove the C30, and I loved that thing. I mean, it was just the craziest, most fun little car. And then my sister has the XC90, which is wonderful. So I'm going to check and see what else is in the fleet here, and see what I can get into. And I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, because I've driven the XC60, in addition, and the XC40, and I quite liked both of those. I didn't encounter any issues with the powertrain behavior in either of those. So I'll be curious to see if that's if maybe it's just something about driving in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Driving Connecticut is terrible. It's one of the reasons I left. It's awful. It's like it's a speed bump in between Boston and Manhattan.
Hey, it is not. I like my little state.
It's okay. There's good pizza in New Haven, and that's
No, there's excellent pizza down here. You guys have to come down.
that will be fine. My 10-year-old has decided that every new city we visit, we have to try pizza.
Yes.
And I'm fine with that, but just sometimes it's like not the right time. It's like, no, we just ate dinner. We're not stopping for a pizza.
So I'll tell you, speaking of road trips, on Sunday, I'm driving down to Washington, D.C. in a Buick Regal GS to go to the Elite 8 game.
That should be a good time. Yeah.
I know. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll report back on that next week.
And the game should be good, too. I mean,
provided Duke wins.
Well, I think you're going to have people, an equal amount of people that are happy if they win and happy if they lose. So either way.
It's kind of like the Yankees.
Yeah, kind of. Right.
Well,
everybody loves
I just want them to win on Friday night so that I can go, because I can't go Friday night. So I just need them to win Friday night so that I can go see Zion Williamson play on Sunday.
All right. Well, good luck.
Thank you. Yes, so send
maybe
positive thoughts.
Right. Maybe Buick can just arrange it that way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure PR would help out. Somebody in PR would help.
So, speaking of that 95 corridor, do you want to regale us just briefly with what it's like to have a Ram? And this was a heavy-duty Ram, right, in Manhattan?
Yes. So I went to they had a Jeep Gladiator showing. We weren't allowed to drive it, and then we had the Ram, the heavy duty Ram pickup truck, and that was tons of fun. It was
Literally.
shocking. Tons,
Many tons,
exactly, many tons. So we were on we were right near the Jacob Javits Center in the city, and it was just, the traffic was unbelievable. And, having grown up near the city, I got to tell you, I think that the traffic is just worse than it's ever been. So we couldn't get, up to speed or anything. But one of the reasons I wanted to mention it is because there were a couple of things that really impressed me. First of all, even in the city, this truck just drove so well. I mean, it drove like, I didn't feel like I had this behemoth in Manhattan. And then we got stuck on one block for 5 light cycles. So it was somewhere around 15 minutes just trying to, they actually called because I had Jim Morrison, the head of the Ram brand, in the truck with me. And we've known each other a long time. And I think they feared that we had run away to go do fun things together. And so we were like, no. And I told him, I said, you better call them because they're going to wonder what I did with you. And sure enough, he was like, oh yeah, look, they're looking for me. I'm like, I'm not surprised. And so, but the truck itself was just, it was easy to handle. It took the turns really well. We were able to use, while we were sitting there, we wanted to kind of look around and see, we were able to try all the features out in terms of the towing and the trailer hitch and such, like spying on people on the sidewalks while we sat there. But it really, I wanted to mention it because I just thought that it was just surprisingly good to drive in the city. Very easy to get in and out of. Terrific features. The interior is well deserved of many awards that it's won. And now that they have the new tailgate where you can actually get in and out, it's actually a split tailgate, which is unique to the marketplace. I really enjoy this truck. I had the 1500 right around Christmas time. And likewise, I loved driving it in the city. I drove it around in Greenwich. I would take it to SoulCycle in the morning and think, am I going to be able to find a parking place? But I always did. And I always felt like I did because it was just like driving a bigger vehicle, but not this behemoth.
Well, and I mean, if you can't find a spot, you make one.
Exactly. You just move things out of the way.
Yeah, you just pull right in wherever you want.
Yeah, but I do think that that's really Ram's distinction right now among trucks and the heavy duties too. They haven't separated the idea that the work truck is also a luxury truck, and part of that is because they make a ton of profit, but also I think that's what people are buying. It's just like the new personal luxury kind of.
It is. Well, and like one of the things they talked about was the fact that somebody that's going to haul a $200,000 or $300,000 camper behind that, or have $500,000 horses, are going to want something that is comfortable, luxurious. They're not pinching pennies, and so they want a good value. Obviously, that's how they're wealthy, is they use their money wisely. But
the 1%ers want to be comfortable. I say, while they enjoy their passive income. I get it.
They do, but they make a valid point to say, look, we're going to doll this up. I mean, those things are 90. I think 95. Between $95,000 and $105,000, which is insane for a pickup truck, until you realize, you put a little bit more context into it, in that, what is this thing hauling? And it's hauling, expensive toys.
Yeah. And the story that we often hear, from the marketing people, the marketing managers for these big trucks, is that, you'll get somebody that owns a business that will buy a whole fleet of these, a whole fleet of trucks, for their business, whether it's a contractor or, a plumbing business, or, whatever it might be, and then they will buy, they'll buy the regular ones, the work truck versions, for the crews to drive around, to do their work. And then, they buy a premium one, as their, as the boss will buy a premium one, or more likely lease a premium one as their personal vehicle, to use to drive around, and haul, as you say, haul the horses and haul the big, 25-foot Airstream trailers and things like that.
Right. So, it was just, I think that, pickup trucks have come a long way, obviously. And one of the things that I think it's always important to remember, as I've mentioned before, is that domestically oriented buyer. That person that when they win the lottery, they don't go buy a Mercedes. They buy the most tricked out F-150 they can buy. And that's what I think that they're catering to. I think they're catering to that type of consumer. And their money is often even more green than anybody else's. So I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, well, I mean, given what those things cost, you almost have to win the lottery now to buy a tricked out.
Yeah.
They're not cheap.
They are not. It's amazing. But they're selling like crazy.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's stay with the big truck theme. Sam.
Okay.
How's the Titan Pro 4X thing?
Yeah, so I just sent back a 2019 Nissan Titan this morning, and it's a really good truck. It is so vastly superior to the last generation Titan, and I've driven them a couple of times before. I've driven the XD, which has the 5-liter Cummins diesel V8 in it, and this time I had one with the Nissan 5.6-liter gasoline V8, which has 390 horsepower and 394 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, this is a big, hefty truck, but that engine's got more than enough grunt to do whatever. It does not feel like it's lacking in power at all.
I really like that engine. I want it in a 350Z. Or 370Z, but that's just me.
That would be nice,
right? It'd be a good time.
I'm pretty sure it wouldn't fit, but
anything fits when you've got enough creativity, it'll fit.
Yeah, well, it's a big wide engine, with the twin cams and everything.
It definitely won't fit stock, I'm sure.
Yeah, but so this one is the Pro 4X crew cab, which is the more off-road oriented version. So this is not competitor. This is not trying to challenge trucks like the Raptor, but rather things like an F-150, FX4, or a Silverado Z71 package, that sort of thing. So it sits a little taller. It's got more off-road oriented tires, but even with that, it still has quite a fairly luxurious interior. Probably not quite up to the standards of the $100,000 truck that Rebecca was driving, but I would say that after Ram, Nissan right now is probably got the nicest interiors on their trucks on the Titan. This one had leather coverings on the dashboard and on the seats and everything. It was really nicely equipped. Heated and cooled seats, plenty of room inside, and the current generation Titan also has really good driving dynamics. I'd say it's not quite up to the par of the Ram 1500. And I was interested, in what you were saying, Rebecca, about the ride quality of the heavy duty, because for Ram, on the 1500 they have coil spring rear suspension, but on the heavy duties they keep the leaf springs.
Well, the 2500 has the coils and airbags. Yeah.
Are you okay?
And the 3500 has leaves.
Ah, okay. I thought they all had leaf springs. All right, so that would explain why it does so well. But even with leaf springs, the Titan, is actually surprisingly nimble, and has does a good job of soaking up the road. I'd say it's not quite up to the standard of the Ram, but it's pretty close. And I'd say it's definitely superior to the GM or Ford pickups, and miles ahead of the Tundra, which is pretty ancient at this point.
The Tundra was literally like frozen in time.
Yeah.
As the permafrost melts, that truck just never changes.
I could not wait for them to come and pick up that truck when I had it in the fall.
The Tundra?
Yes.
Yeah, I've never been particularly impressed with the Tundra. Any of the times that I've driven it. And I've driven it a couple of different times now during its life cycle. Early on, back in about 2009 or 10, and then about a year and a half ago, I had one as well. And it's definitely not competitive in the class. It wasn't particularly competitive in the class when it was new, and it's definitely not competitive today. Nissan does include some interesting stuff, some interesting features on this truck. They don't have, like the step bumper that GM has on theirs, or the step that comes out of the top of the tailgate that Ford has on their trucks. But they do have a retractable step under the rear corner of the bumper, so you can just step on it and push it down, and that gives you easier access to get in and out of the bed. And then in the bed, they've got this tie-down system, that has movable cleats. So there's some rails in there and movable cleats, so you can move them around, and use it to tie down different whatever it is you can fit in there. Keep everything nice and secure, so it's not sliding around. So there's a lot of nice features in this thing. It's really well equipped. And this one is a relative bargain at only $54,300. So
that's man, trucks are expensive.
Tell me about it. The Titan, like most of the others, starts down in the $30,000 range, but you can definitely option them up with lots of stuff. So if you're looking for just a work truck, then they have something to suit that kind of budget, and reasonably equipped for that kind of application, including just a standard cab version that they launched last year. But this one is definitely more of a personal use truck than a work truck.
So the thing with the Titan is, I tend to forget it exists. And I feel like that's its problem. And the last time I drove one, I was impressed with it too. The same as you, Sam. It actually, I was impressed it had steering feel.
Yeah.
But I just don't. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's not terribly on my radar. And it is a good truck, especially in the second generation. I liked the first generation Titan too, but
Yeah, the first generation was okay. It wasn't great, but the second generation one is much better, and it's quite a bit. It's a fair bit larger than the previous one was, and it kind of straddles the line between the traditional domestic light duty trucks, the 1500s. And the 2500s, especially as you get into the diesel XD, that one's kind of, at the bottom end, towards the bottom end of the range of the 2500 series trucks, the 3/4 ton trucks, and then kind of in the top, the middle to the top end of the half ton trucks. That like the F-150 and the regular Silverado and Sierra and Ram, so it's a little bigger and heavier. It doesn't quite match up, in terms of its payload capability. If what you need is maximum payload capability, this is probably not the best choice. It's not quite up to snuff with the Ram, Silverado or F-150. But it's close enough that I think for most people it will be fine. And like I said, it definitely has a nicer interior than either the Ford or GM trucks, and really good driving dynamics and ride quality.
Yeah, I was impressed with its interior, I'm sure fuel economy wise, it's not impressive though. I'm sure it's spilling gas at a prodigious rate.
Yeah, you could say that. It's EPA rated at 15 city, 20 highway, 17 miles combined. And I don't think I quite made it up to. I think I was averaging probably about 15, because I was mostly driving around the city during the time that I had it.
Yeah.
Hey,
And the other thing is, because it's fairly tall, especially in the Pro4X version, a lot of parking garages, it's going to be very tight. My wife and I went out to dinner on Saturday night and in downtown Ann Arbor, and pulled into the parking garage, that had a 6'6" clearance, and the antenna was scraping, but the roof did not, but just barely.
Hey, what kind of audio system was in that? Did you play around with it? Was it the Fender?
Yes, it did have the Fender audio system, and it's quite good. Sounds quite good, especially for a truck. But yeah, it's a good audio system.
Wait, Fender is now in Nissans? That's new.
It is.
Yeah, they launched with the new Titan.
Yeah, when I was at CES, a good friend of mine works for Panasonic, and I have a couple of friends actually, and he told me to make sure to go over and check it out. And so I got a demo when I was at CES in the Titan, and it was terrific. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it had a nice, good bass and just good thumping, and all I wanted to do was drive around and play some Southern Fried Rock.
I didn't realize that the Fender system is made by Panasonic. That's interesting. They make They make the ELS surround systems in the Acuras too, which are phenomenal.
Yes. So. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, and this thing, is also quite capable off-road. Back in summer of 2017, Nissan did a drive program out in California, out in Carmel, and we got a chance to do some off-roading with this thing. And, it obviously limited, by its size, in terms of the kind of trails you can go down. You're not going to be following, tricked out Wranglers down there, but it can go over pretty much anything, anything reasonable.
Huh. Well, I guess it's not that much of a surprise. I mean, put the right tires on it, and it should do all right. It's all-wheel or four-wheel drive system. Does it just have like an auto mode too, or?
Yeah. So there's a 2-range 4-wheel drive. So you got 4 high and 4 low, locking diff on the rear axle. So it's it can handle pretty much anything you throw at it within reason.
Well, that's good. The forgotten Nissan gets its day in the sun. That's
yeah.
Well, I went small this week after they came and took the Edge ST, which I have to say, after spending a week with it, I really think that the folks who did the Edge interior, at least for the ST, they should make sure that they take a look over at the F-Series interior and do what they can do with that. because the Edge interior is a lot nicer. It had real metal trim, and the materials looked better. It just presented a lot nicer. And I realize I'm talking about sort of the high end Edge. So, and the more expensive F series do have nicer interiors, but I don't know. I thought it was actually a lot nicer looking and feeling than the truck, but maybe it's been a while since I've been in the truck, so maybe that's not the case. But I was impressed with that. I was impressed with the family friendliness of the Edge. They've been really thoughtful about. It even had a cubby for my phone, and not a lot of cars do that, or not enough cars do that. So
they're starting to do that more, especially as they incorporate wireless charging.
Yeah.
And for phones into a lot of new vehicles, and so they're usually providing a little slot somewhere that you can just stick the phone into, where it's not going to move around too much and stay on the charging pad.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? People are going to bring their stuff into the car, and you can either force them to be inconvenienced, or you can just design the car to accommodate it. They're going to have it one way or another.
Yeah, that was one of the things I noticed in the RAV4 that I had last week that did have a really nice, easily accessible charging pad, and the Volvo V60 doesn't have one at all. There's really no place to put your phone. They expect you to tuck it away.
Yeah, and I think that's actually, if you were to talk to Volvo, they would say yes. That's by design. You're supposed to clamp it into
put it in the center console or the glove box or something.
Right,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
And that's two different approaches. That's accepting that people are going to be people, or that they must bend to your will. And I can appreciate the idea and the thoughtfulness that goes into that. This is the way we do it, and here's why approach. But I think people are going to be people, and
whether we like them or not.
Yeah, if you frustrate them with your setup, they're just going to pick up the phone.
Right.
Because they know how to get what they want with the phone. So, but yes, anyway, we're here to talk about the Kona. So it's the 2019 Hyundai Kona Ultimate, which the last time I had a Kona, it was during a trip I took out to the Pacific Northwest, and I managed to get 2 flats with it. So this time I have 4 good tires. And I just really, really like the Kona a lot. It drives really well. It's really, really cool looking. It's nicely put together. It's not that expensive, although this one, because it's the Ultimate, it's $30,000, which I was a little surprised that it was that high, but it has everything. Even the
it is the Ultimate.
Yeah, correct. It's not the penultimate; it's the Ultimate. It's got the 1.6 liter turbo engine, which is really, really strong. That engine feels like it's larger than it is. So I like that a lot. It has a dual clutch transmission that is, I feel, better in some situations than the DSG, which
I think it's better in most situations than a DSG.
Does it? Yeah, I mean,
I'd say Hyundai's dual clutch is probably the best transmission of that type in the industry right now.
Yeah, because I'm not a fan of dual clutch or automated manual. I call them automated manuals, but like the Ford Power Shift, that's a single clutch. But I just don't like those transmissions because where you want them to be smooth, they're not, and where they are smooth, it kind of like it doesn't matter, But they're a little lighter. They have their other advantages. They're lighter. They're faster. Those kind of things. But this one is really quite buttery in like parking garages or parking lots. Low speed stuff. It does quite well. You notice it just a little bit that it's definitely a dual clutch transmission. So I like that quite a bit. I really like how it goes down the road, though. It feels really well tuned. The ride and handling is good, and it's not really that complicated of a car, right? It's a pretty simple chassis. So they've made it feel pretty disciplined and pretty tidy. So it's one of my favorites.
It does have a multi-link rear suspension, so it's independent all around. It's not using a twist beam or anything.
I thought I had a beam axle.
No. It's a multi-link setup, which is it's quite good.
Yeah, it really it's very well tuned. The steering is nicely weighted. There's not a whole lot of feel, but that's not why people buy these things. The tech is good. I think really it's just a distinctive little hatch that's easy to drive. The ergonomics are really good. They have the screen that it's in its own little binnacle. It doesn't look quite as tacked on as it does in some other cars, like say a Mazda 3. And it has some buttons around the edges that allow you to get what you want pretty quickly. So it's really just, it's easy to get in and operate, and it doesn't frustrate you, and it goes down the road really well, and it's pretty strong. I'm not sure what fuel economy is like because I've only driven it today.
Do you have the front drive or all-wheel drive?
No, I've got the all-wheel drive.
Okay, yeah, the all-wheel drive has the multi-link setup. The front drive is torsion beam.
Okay, and like I think I've driven all flavors of it, and none of them are bad. They're all pretty good. And I was surprised actually too. The all-wheel drive has a locking feature, which that actually seems uncommon to me.
It is definitely in that segment, and in fact, increasingly, a lot of the subcompact crossovers like that, especially the lower cost ones, aren't even offering all-wheel drive at all. Like the Nissan Kicks and the Toyota CHR are front drive only, at least in North America. They don't even bother with an all-wheel drive version.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like they don't really need it, and honestly, you're not taking this off road, so the all-wheel drive is there for that extra measure of comfort in inclement weather. So to see the locking button, I like it because if you get stuck in a snowbank or something, you lock it, it'll get itself out a little bit easier than just torturing the traction control and spinning that one tire,
frying your brakes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's again, it's the Hyundai thing, right? It's just really well equipped. It's not that big in the back seat, but it's not supposed to be. It has a pretty decent cargo capacity for what it is. This is the subcompact hatchback. I don't care how it presents or whether it's a crossover or not. It's a subcompact hatch, and it fills that role really, really well. And you could live with this every day. Even if you were using it as a family vehicle, it's going to be kind of tight if you've got like child seats and stuff that they go, especially like the convertible ones with the bucket and all that. Like, the little, I forget what it's called, the little carrier that snaps in. Like those things,
yeah.
The back seat's tight for that if you're tall. But the front seat is really quite accommodating. And the one that I got the flats in, I had loaded up with a bunch of stuff, and that was fine. So it can carry a lot too. It's in a segment too. Like everything in that segment is kind of distinctive. Like the Kicks you were talking about, the CHR. So they're all trying to lead with some style. I just think that the Kona is maybe the best in that segment for offering you substance together with the style. Like the CHR I really liked, but it has some compromises, and it doesn't feel as premium, I suppose. It doesn't have the same kind of I don't know what the word is. Joie de vivre, say.
Yeah.
Sure.
I had the Kona back in right before Christmas, and I really liked it too. I thought it was I felt good driving it. It was very expressive without being alienating, and it was just fun to drive. It was one of those cars that you have this feeling of just comfort. Like it's just easy to drive. You don't have to think about it. It didn't require a lot of hassle or effort to learn it. It was I really just liked it. It was just very, very appealing. It wasn't going to be, the most exciting or most dynamic car you've ever driven in your life, but it was definitely just a really good, solid crossover, like hatchback. And I agree, it's a hatchback, but it was just a good, solid car.
Right. I don't know how else to express it other than like, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a good one. I haven't driven the EV, and so I'm curious about when we get that opportunity. And then there's the new Iron Man edition coming out. I don't know if it's available yet, but
What's that?
that looks like it's kind of fun.
Iron
Well,
Man.
I drove the EV a few weeks ago and was really impressed with it.
Oh, that's right. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's got one of the longest ranges. It's got the longest range of any lower cost mainstream EV that's available today at 258 miles.
As long as people
and-
aren't obnoxiously not charging.
Well, yes. But we did that rant, and
Yes.
somebody complained about that on
On
calling
Twitter.
it an ear rape on Twitter. It's like,
What?
come on. Yeah, somebody called it an ear rape. It's like, come on.
Relax.
Yeah. So anyway, so you get three quite distinct variants. With the base 2-liter, naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, the 1.6-liter turbo, and the electric, and they all have their cool characteristics, and I think they're all really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think probably my favorite engine in the Kona is the 2-liter, not the turbo. The turbo is great. It has that little extra bit of oomph, but it almost feels like more aggressive than you really need. Here, like it's unnecessary.
Well,
Yeah. Go
ahead.
ahead, Rebecca.
well, the Iron Man edition, I just have to note, has matte paint, so that would be cool to see as well.
Yeah, but that stuff is really hard to take care of.
I know.
What are you supposed
looks
to do?
great,
Are you
though.
supposed to wash it or something?
Yeah, you hand wash it. You can't take it through an automatic car wash. You have to hand wash it. You don't wax it or anything.
Huh. You'd think that they'd be able to get around that with just like doing a wrap or something, like just paint them base white and just wrap them in vinyl, matte vinyl.
Well, that's actually a lot of the ones that you see, a lot of the stuff that you see on the road that is matte. That's exactly what they do. It's just a vinyl wrap, and that's a lot cheaper. The doing a painted matte finish is actually a pretty complex process, and it's quite expensive.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially since paint has been designed to shine for like
Yeah.
centuries. And now we want an eggshell finish on our cars. I mean, that's but no, the Kona. We'll wrap this up and just say I think we all continue to endorse the Kona. It's
Yes.
a decent entry into that space, which is actually it's quite an interesting little niche too. I like the kicks a lot. I like the CHR and into the mix as we get to our topics. It's maybe a little bigger, but the Lincoln Corsair is coming. We're going to see a teaser of that, and that is it's a new name for an existing model, it'll be a new model, but an existing.
It's a replacement for the Lincoln MKC, which came out in 2014. So it's been out there for 5 years now, and the MKC was based on the Escape, but with completely different body and interior, and different engines as well. And the Corsair, it's finally ditching the. There's only now with the Corsair. There's now only 2 MKs left in the Lincoln lineup: the MKZ and the MKT. And the MKT is surely not long for this world.
You can still get the MKT.
You can still buy the MKT. I think as long
Isn't
as they
it
keep
fleet,
building.
fleet only though, the MKT. I thought it was fleet only.
Possibly, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Fleet's the only one who's going to buy them anyway.
Yeah, I think Fleets are the only ones buying them. Basically,
but I thought
only
it was a
selling them
deliberate
for livery.
move.
Yeah.
To make the MK when the Navigator came out.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. Certainly, I think once the Aviator goes on sale this summer, that'll probably be the end of the MKT. I don't think we'll see the MKT much longer after that. And unfortunately, that means that the Flex will probably also go away.
Well, but the MKT and the Flex, like those, they're not bad for what they are. They're a good fleet vehicle. They're roomy and.
Although the Flex is great, I've always loved the Flex. I thought it was, it had a cool, distinctive look, and if you're looking for something, to haul a family around, I always thought it was a great option. It drives really well,
That thing is batshit ugly. I'm sorry.
Oh no, the MKT has an uncool
No, the
distinctive look.
Flex. The Flex.
The Flex. You don't like the Flex?
The Flex is awesome.
Boxy.
The Flex is awesome. I love the Flex.
Well, good. You can have it.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a need for a vehicle of that type anymore. I mean, my kids are grown and gone, so I don't need something like the Flex.
Well, now you need to go antiquing, and that's
You have excellent taste in dogs. I'm going to give you that, but the Flex, no.
okay.
But yeah, at least on the Lincoln website, you can still buy the MKT. But at any rate, for the 3 or 4 people a month that want them, it's still out there for now. But the Corsair, that's going to be all new, and this is we won't know for sure until the New York Auto Show in a few weeks, but it's presumably based on the same new front wheel drive unibody flexible platform that Ford is going to be introducing. That's going to be under the Escape, and like the rest of Ford's new utility vehicles, it's going to have electrified powertrain options. So my guess is that it'll be similar to what they've done with the Aviator and the Explorer. So you'll probably have a plug-in hybrid option in the Corsair, and perhaps a regular hybrid in the Escape, and that's really about all we know at this point about these things. There's some spy photos out there.
I have to say, I've got to give Lincoln huge kudos for the way that they are rolling out these name changes. And I think they're just doing a really, really good job of updating the names, replacing them, not going wholesale, but just doing it one model at a time. I think this is a really good lesson on rebranding and updating your brands that people should make note of and that they're not getting enough credit for.
Well,
no, I agree.
And we just ranted last week too about the last 2 weeks now about
or 3 or 4
Cadillac doing the alphanumerics. And
right.
Lincoln is going in the completely opposite direction because they didn't really do alphanumerics, but they did alphas. And it got confusing. I remember trying to figure out, was it, MKZ or MKT or what? Like we would get confused and we'd have to go back and correct.
Well, Lincoln probably did it worse than anybody because at least with most of the other companies, most of the other premium brands that have done this sort of thing, there's usually some semblance of logic to it, where, as you go up, as the numbers get bigger, it's usually a larger vehicle. You go, BMW, you go 1 Series, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Each one is progressively larger. And same with even Cadillac. For all the issues we have with them. An XT4 is smaller than an XT5. A CT, the new CT5 is smaller than the CT6. Presumably the XT7 when it arrives, if it arrives, will be larger still than. Oh no, wait, was it? What's the one? Oh, XT6 is. Anyway, you get my point. Amusing. Yeah, but Lincoln, it was just completely random. You had the MKS, which was their bigger sedan. The midsize sedan was the MKZ. You had, the MKT is this 3-row crossover thing.
Well, so the MKZ was only MKZ because it started as Zephyr.
Right.
I don't know. So, where did the S come from? Did they just pick? Sedan,
probably.
But the MKZ was also sedan. Yeah, so it's definitely confusing.
I don't know. It was stupid.
I can only imagine the amount of meetings that had to happen for that stuff to take
place. And there were a lot of meetings. You can count on that.
But they're doing a good job now.
Yes, they fixed it.
Well, beyond the names too, the cars themselves are better. Even with their older hardware. I remember he was talking about the Nautilus Black Label, which I quite liked, and I thought that was really a big step in the right direction. And so to see what they can do with newer hardware is going to be that's really going to be telling about how they're actually set up for the next, I don't know, 5 years. The platforms are going to last a while, and hopefully more than 5 years. But that's really the hump for Lincoln to get over. Is they've done a good job of, I think, in the last 3 years, going from like Death Watch to Signs of Life, and now how do they continue it? And I want to see these new platforms. I want to drive them. I'm glad that they have names, because I think the names are distinctive. It's also something to hang your hat on. And I mean, Corsair doesn't really have any resonance for anybody who's not a car geek or who's not older. Like, I immediately think of the Edsel, which is maybe not the best place to go, but
or someone who's a fan of World War II fighter planes.
Okay, right? Was the F4U Corsair, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
With the bent wings.
Oh, that's right. And so, if they introduce it at New York, are they going to introduce it in New York? Okay, so there you go. Ford, here's an idea. Take everybody from the Javits and walk them up West Side Highway and go to the Intrepid. Because the Intrepid is an Essex class carrier, and Essex class carriers had Corsairs on them. I believe because the folded wings, and they had an elevator that would put them down into the hangar, right? I think.
Yeah.
So
the reason the Corsair fighter had the bent wings was because it had they designed it with really high performance, and so they put a huge prop on the thing, and so they had to bend the wings so that they could have clearance for the prop without having to have really long landing gear.
I see. So then maybe that's not what I'm thinking of. What? No, they do. The wings fold in half too for storage.
Oh, they do fold.
Yeah.
But even when they were folded out, even when it was flying, the Corsair still has bent wings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Like a gull, like a seagull.
Yeah. We're completely off course now. I expect that it's going to be a really interesting reveal in New York, no matter what. And that's a really important car for Lincoln, because it's the right size. The Nautilus is there with the sort of midsize and slightly larger, but the compact luxury crossovers are red hot, and Lincoln has a chance. One chance.
Well, I would say from my experience with like looking at the Aviator, the Navigator, I think the interior is probably going to blow us away. And I was not blown away by the Cadillac CTX. What is
XT4.
the XT4? Thank you.
or the XT6.
The XT4. I remember being
probably,
very disappointed in that. So I think that Lincoln already has a leg up when it comes to the interior. So I'm excited for New York. I can't wait to see this.
So what was disappointing about the Cadillac? Was it materials or finishes?
It was the materials. It was very plasticky. I haven't driven it yet and spent some time in it, but I was really disappointed. There was a lot of just hard black plastic surfaces in the one that I saw.
It's kind of tough when you're selling your expensive luxury vehicle.
Yeah, I drove the XT4 in Seattle last fall, and it drives well, but you're right, Rebecca. The interior is just quite underwhelming.
And it doesn't need to be. I mean, that's what's so disappointing is that, I think that within General Motors, within that design studio, I think that there are the right materials. I just think that I don't know if they just cut at the last minute. It's, they have to make a profit on these things, but there's just got to be a better way. When you think about the Infiniti interiors, when you think about the Lincoln interiors
are so nice.
Right? I mean, they're gorgeous. And even the Volvo, it's very classic, very simple. It doesn't have to be over the top. There's got to be a way that General Motors can improve their interiors, or just they've got to figure that out. I think that's key to their long-term success. They really do.
Well, I remember somebody at some point recalling a conversation they had with Bob Lutz about it when he was at Chrysler, and talking about how in the 90s, Chrysler was really well known for their interiors and just, hey, you guys make a really nice interior for the price, especially. And one of the things that they did, he was explaining, was, the whole door panel doesn't have to be nice, or the top part of it, or what you see, what you touch, that's got to be nice. But like the bottom part of it can be not quite as good. And it's just some of that cheating. And, I look at, and Ford does it too. You look at the door panels of like a Mustang and it's all vacuum formed plastic or just like molded plastic. And you're just like, well, that's gross.
Yeah.
And GM does the same thing. It's cover it up where people are going to see it the most and find your costs to cut elsewhere. But
right.
I don't work in that department, so
sadly, none of us do.
Yeah. I don't know that I do any better than the people that are already there working hard that we continue to just complain about.
I prefer it's encourage.
It's what?
I prefer to consider that we are encouraging them.
Yes, we're encouraging
providing constructive criticism.
Right.
Constructive criticism. We want them to succeed.
Yes.
Yeah, and so the Corsair is coming. We've seen the teaser. I guess we're all kind of in agreement that it's going to be good. At least the interior is going to be good.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, given the Lincoln trend over the last couple of years with the Navigator, the Aviator, and the Continental, there's every reason to expect that the interior of this thing is going to be fantastic. From what we've seen of spy photos, in the last month or two, this is, from a design perspective, it shares a lot with the Aviator, but just scaled down to, more compact dimensions. So I have confidence that this thing will be really good.
All right. And
all right, next.
Yeah, let's move on to
Smart.
Geely saving Smart. I didn't realize that Smart was still kind of a going concern maybe it's not in the U.S., but
Daimler tried to pivot last year, and shift Smart to all electric, and apparently that's not really having much impact on sales. They in the last couple of days, as we record this, there were some reports coming out that the Daimler board was considering, just ditching Smart altogether after this current generation. For the last generation, for the current generation when they developed it, they decided, in order to try and save money, they partnered up with Renault, and so
which is just a complete mess right now. Isn't it, with like the Carlos Ghosn thing and all that going on?
No, Renault's doing okay. But they shared a platform with the Renault Twingo, the new Renault Twingo, and the Smart, and it didn't really seem to have much impact on sales. I think just the whole concept of the Smart seems to have faded away. People, I think the first couple generations, the first three generations of Smart, or first two generations of Smart, were just so awful in so many ways that people just decided, that's enough. We've had enough of this.
Were they globally awful, or were they? They were definitely awful in the States, but were they?
Yeah, they were pretty awful everywhere. I mean, they didn't drive very well. They generally had pretty poor ride quality. I mean, they were small, with a tiny footprint. The first generation one was only 8 feet long from bumper to bumper, which, you've probably seen pictures of them, parked perpendicular to the curb, parallel parked perpendicular to the curb, in between two other cars because it's so short. So, it was a tiny vehicle. It was a very interesting vehicle from an engineering perspective. They had a little 1-liter 3-cylinder engine mounted, horizontally, tilted over on its side, mounted under the back of the car, driving the rear wheels. And it was surprisingly roomy inside for a car that was only 8 feet long, but it just didn't drive very well. And it was a generally unpleasant experience to drive the thing, especially if you got one with the automated manual transmission, which was really terrible. I mean, it the shift quality was just atrocious.
You're not selling it, man. It's just not making
No. Well, that's part of why they.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's part of what when the first time I drove a Smart was a first generation one, that it was one that I think Bosch had here as part of a fleet. They had brought it over for media evaluations. It was part of a group of vehicles, European diesel vehicles that they had brought over, and so this was a diesel Smart, first generation diesel Smart that had. Maybe about 60, 65 horsepower.
And those are supposed to be the good ones, too, with the diesels.
Well, yeah, they were fuel efficient, but that's about all you could say for them. If you ever driven a VW Beetle, like an old air-cooled Beetle?
It's been a very long time since I was in an air-cooled VW, but...
It was
gutless.
In some respects it was a lot like that. It was pretty gutless. I think 0 to 60 was about 19 seconds, and it was slow. It was extremely noisy. Driving the thing on the highway was terrifying. It was just not a good vehicle. And the second one, the ones that they brought to the U.S. market were only marginally better. They were not nearly as noisy, and they were definitely quicker, but the transmissions were still awful. And it didn't get particularly good fuel economy. The gas engine version, I think it was only rated. It only got about 32, 33 miles per gallon, which for a tiny little car like this, that just didn't make it worthwhile. So anyway, Daimler has been looking at ditching the whole project after 20 some years. And so now it looks like Geely might step in to buy 50% of Smart and keep it going for some reason. And I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the reason?
I would say the India market.
Did you see a bunch when you were over there?
No, but it's, at the size of, it's potentially the size, like it would be a good replacement for rickshaws. Not, well.
Except it's not that cheap.
I was going to say, wait, it's only two-seater, right?
Yeah. They have a 4-seat version now too in the current generation.
Is it 4-seat and 2 doors?
No, it's a 4-door.
4-door. So that's a possibility. I mean, I'm just speculating. I'm not saying anything just because I was there, but I'm just thinking of other places. Like when you think, the Smart has historically been incredibly popular in Rome because of the parking, because you can park it,
sense, yeah.
But the when you think about places that still need decent transportation, places like India, they have a need. And also think about Uber and Lyft. These kinds of cars might be pretty good for that kind of substitute transportation.
Yeah, and maybe that's their play is mobility, or TNCs or something could use them, especially since we've seen that most Uber and Lyft rides are one car for one person and then the deadheads. So if you can make those smaller, that takes some of the pressure off the roads a little
right.
bit, not a whole lot, but.
Think about Tata's history of, I'm sorry, we're talking about Geely, aren't we?
Yeah.
But when you think about, trying to look at at developing markets and the ability to fulfill that need, something like this Smart car, while it is filled with flaws from our standpoint, still is better than public transportation for some people. Or being able to provide that, a small car in that's, especially if they can make them electric, that, might be able to get around the congestion charge or be able to go into the carpool lane or do different things that, gets people into transportation that ordinarily wouldn't have been able to get there.
Yeah. And so Geely looks like they're very aggressively trying to move themselves into this position where they've got these strong global brands, and Smart may or may not be one of them. But they just gave Lotus a big infusion of cash. They own Volvo, and they've done very well with Volvo. And then they've got their own stuff too, which
they also own London Taxi Company.
Oh, that's right. They do. Because I was just thinking, like, why would they buy Smart for to provide some kind of like urban mobility or like TNC or emerging market car? They already have their own line of cars. Like, I'm looking at their site now. Like, they've got the GC6, which is a small sedan, which is probably not as small as a Smart, but still, like, they make it and sell it.
Right. I think that a brand like Smart, we just have to think about on a global basis. We have to look at these things on a global basis and see the strategy that they could employ there.
Yeah, but the problem is the brand itself has never really gained much traction really anywhere outside of Europe.
Well, yeah, but I think if you say Smart car, people know that it's that small little egg-shaped thing. For better or for worse.
Yeah. I don't know that it's. I wouldn't describe it as a damaged brand.
No, but they definitely suck.
Well, but again, they do for us. They do,
Well,
and
yeah.
and I think maybe there was such a disconnect between Daimler owning them, owning Smart, that I don't know, it just never really made a lot of sense.
Well, so here's where I think it didn't really resonate in the U.S. was that, and Sam, your commentary kind of points to that as well. You think small car, and you immediately think fuel economy, and the fuel economy of the Smart here wasn't really that good, but it also wasn't really the entire point. Like, yes, it should be efficient, but maximum efficiency wasn't really the mission. It was maximum fuel efficiency. It was more maximum space efficiency.
Space efficiency,
right?
yeah.
So you could park them nose in and get to a normal parking spot. Which in Europe, especially where they've got congestion charges and stuff like that now, that made it was a more compelling argument. And it's really an urban car, and I think it was an urban lifestyle car, but that's where they sort of failed here, was making it more of a premium kind of lifestyle brand. It was just, if you need a small, cheap car for the city commute, you could look at the Smart, but it was also dreadful, and so I have a lot of respect for the people who I occasionally see on the highway with these things. It's just like, what is the matter with you?
You don't want to be stuck in the or be in the wake of a giant tractor trailer in one of those things.
No, or a Ram 3500 HD.
Yeah, it's got the tiny little wheelbase, and it's just not a thing. But I think Daimler just sort of half-heartedly launched it here. They didn't really give it enough sort of credibility to be like, yes, it's the tiny Daimler or whatever, it's supposed to be premium, and here's the point about it. I actually like this generation of Smart that we've got right now. I think it's kind of cool looking, and I love the idea, the packaging efficiency like you were talking about. It's really fascinating to look at how it's put together. I don't know that I'd want to drive one.
Well, yeah, I mean, even the first generation especially, and the first and second generation, they had this space frame structure, and then attached body panels to that, and you had the tiny little engine in the back, and there was basically nothing in front of the driver except a bulkhead.
And death. Certain death.
Yeah. No, not necessarily, actually. Because the thing is, I mean, there are crash test videos out there, showing the Smart being crashed, doing like an offset frontal crash against I think a Mercedes C-Class, and the way the structure was designed, basically the car would just bounce off. Whatever.
It's
the structure was really rigid.
And I remember,
and it would just go spinning off to one side,
right, and that's where the energy goes. And so as long as it's rigid enough to not come apart as it bounces,
and
off
it was. Things. I mean, it did fine in crash tests. So, that it wasn't a matter of safety in that perspective, it didn't handle very well.
Yeah, well,
In
it had a
fact,
wider track in the rear than the front, which sets you up for some
right.
fun.
And I don't know if you remember, when it first came out, actually, it came out just shortly after the original Mercedes-Benz A-Class, back in the late 90s. And, I think it was about 97 or 98. When the A-Class first came out, a Swedish magazine was, running the moose test on this thing, which, as they are wont to do there.
Like Technikens or Technikens or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember which publication it was, but they were doing the moose test, and the Mercedes A-Class, which had a lot of similarities in its structure to the Smart, actually rolled over during that test, and Mercedes responded by going back and rushing into production one of the first stability control systems to put it on there. And, the Smart was just about to launch at that time, and they actually delayed the launch of the Smart so they could go back and make some changes, and they added stability control as standard equipment on the Smart, and also widened the rear track to try to improve the stability. And, it didn't do much for the handling of the car, but it did make it more stable.
That sounds an awful lot like the 737 MAX thing.
Oh,
No. The problem with that is we've got this existing architecture, and we can move some things around, but really, we need software to save us because the changes we've made have changed the dynamics.
In some respects, it's that's not it's a fairly valid comparison.
I don't mean the tragic crashes. But what we're seeing is the system that is apparently reliant on a single sensor, is designed to sort of just compensate. And it's the same idea as the B2. The B2 you couldn't really fly all that well if you had to fly it manually. The computers make that thing fly.
Right.
So I guess that's valid. Again, we're off track.
Well,
yeah.
So Geely and Daimler have been doing a lot of investigating into doing more, working closer together. And so one of the things that they've done is this ride-hailing service out of China. Now they're focusing on luxury vehicles right now, but there certainly is opportunity to expand even the car-to-go or car-to-share that Daimler has, and they populate that with the smart cars. So if Geely wants to take that over and implement that on an even broader scale in China, that would be the logical place for the smart car.
Do you think there's enough demand for it there that they would roll out their own? I guess that's what they all want to do, right? They all want to own the fleets.
So they're reporting that there's 470,000 customers in China who have participated in what they call station-based car sharing services.
So those are car sharing services like Zipcar,
right?
Where the car is parked at some location, you go pick it up, you drive it around, and when you're done, you drop it back off at the same location where you started from.
Right, that's car to go and car to share.
Right. So there's two different varieties of car sharing. There's station based and free floating, which is more like the scooter model where you pick it up, wherever it is, drive it to where you're going.
Yeah.
Well, no,
right?
hopefully you don't throw it in the river, but you park it wherever at your destination, and you leave it for somebody else to take and drive it from there. So those are the two models of car sharing, and station-based is what Car2Go has been doing so far. Car2Go, Daimler and BMW actually just recently closed a deal to essentially merge their mobility services. So Car2Go and BMW's Reach Now, Drive Now system they've both been combined into a joint venture that's owned by Daimler and BMW. So I'm not quite sure how Geely would necessarily fit into that one.
I don't know. I mean, it was announced.
Maybe
March
they come
1st.
in and take maybe they come in and take a partial stake in that project as well.
Geely's
Well,
making all these moves to sort of scoop up struggling Western automakers, and so they've got this interesting portfolio of brands, and adding smart to
Yeah.
it it's curious.
Well, there's also the local opportunity as well for Geely in China. I mean, BMW and Daimler obviously are not domestic brands, and so maybe there is an opportunity to slap a domestic label on there as well. If Geely takes controlling interest in Smart.
Yeah, and Geely's got a bunch of domestic brands that that they sell under, including Geely, and I'm trying to remember some of the others. They have a whole bunch. They have, I think, 4 or 5 different brands that they sell in China now.
Really?
Yeah.
But again, I think this is something that we've got to look at globally to make any kind of sense of it.
Oh, the other one that Geely has is Lynk & Co., which is their newest brand that they just recently launched, which is sharing its platform with the Volvo XC40.
Right.
And this is one that they launched, and they're doing as a subscription only model.
I wonder, when I'm on their website now as well, they have an X7. How does that happen?
It's China.
They must have trademarked it before BMW brought the X7 out.
Right? They've got an X7 and an X7 Sport.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's China.
Yeah.
It's such a fascinating pocket of the industry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, and they own Terrafugia too. Maybe they're going to make flying smarts.
Ooh, there you go. Now we're talking.
Well, it's rigid, right? We
mean,
just got done saying it's rigid, so if you crash it, it's just...
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna do something crazy, let's get real about it.
Absolutely. Put some wings on it that bend.
Right? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're never going to see the...
What could possibly go wrong?
And to move on to the next story, which kind of fits in with this idea, is if they ever have a flying smart, it will probably have the mandated driver assistance technology that Europe is pretty much on the cusp of implementing at this point.
Yeah, the European Commission is on the verge of, or I guess they have passed or are about to pass a bill that would mandate a whole bunch of driver assistance features into new cars starting in 2022 in the European market. And a lot of it is the stuff that is quickly becoming standard anyway. Things like automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, backup cameras. I mean, those have been mandatory here in the U.S. for several years now. But adding in things like driver drowsiness and attention monitoring systems, which Volvo just announced last week that that they're going to make standard in their cars starting in 2020 anyway. But they're also adding some other interesting features, like they want to mandate car makers to design steering columns to accommodate a standardized interface to fit alcohol interlocks. So you can basically build in a breathalyzer into the car and prevent it from moving if you blow positive on that. Also having an emergency stop signal that is already used in some markets. So when you hit the brakes really hard, it'll flash the brake lights and hazard lights. When it detects an emergency stop. An accident data recorder, like a black box, and here in the U.S., most new cars already have what we call an event data recorder, which captures some data, a few seconds worth of data. In the event of a crash, if the airbag goes off, it captures a bunch of data. They typically capture about 5 or 10 seconds worth of data when an airbag goes off. But I think this would actually capture more data to help with accident reconstruction and evaluation. And then one of the most controversial items is something they call intelligent speed assistance, ISA, that would use GPS and speed limit sign recognition to notify the driver of the local legal limit and it could also be tied into the engine control to limit the vehicle speed to the speed limit.
That's the one. Everything else was fine, but that one, I don't like that one.
I'm not going with that one either.
Yeah. It does say that the plan is that the driver will be able to override ISA, but it's still dubious.
For now.
So now what's interesting though is, when we think about all of the talk about autonomous driving and self-driving cars, that's the speed limit is one of the things that is discussed about the fact that how do you teach a self-driving car to exceed the speed limit? It's binary. It's like yes or no. So in some ways, these are technologies that would be in place as cars become more autonomous.
Yeah. And this is a conversation I've had with many of the people working on automated driving systems, how do you deal with laws like speed limits, or even, the crossing solid lines, solid lane markers. Because there are times, if there's something obstructing the road where you have to cross over a solid yellow line,
Sure.
dividing the middle of the road, to safely go around it. And same thing goes with speed limits. I've had this conversation with Brian Selesky, the CEO of Argo,
Yes.
and we were talking about this. If these vehicles have to coexist with human-driven vehicles for many years, which they will, how do we have? What's the safest way to do that? If the flow of traffic, if the speed limit on a particular road is 55 miles an hour, but everybody's driving 65 or 70 miles an hour, if you've got an autonomous vehicle in the middle of this crowd that's going along at 55, it's actually more of a hazard to the rest of the traffic flow than all of the vehicles that are going roughly the same speed. From traffic studies, it's been shown that it's not so much the absolute speed that is the real danger, but it's fluctuations in speed that are more likely to cause accidents.
Sure.
And especially if you have a lot of variability in speed. If everybody on the road is going at the same speed, regardless of what the speed is, it's safer than if you have a broad spread, from the fastest to the slowest cars. And, if you have a few very slow cars operating in the middle of this higher speed flow, then that's also very unsafe. So in that scenario, do you allow an autonomous vehicle to go with the flow of traffic, or do you force it to stick to the speed limit? So, that's a question that nobody's quite sure what the answer to is right now. I mean, they know what probably the desirable one is, but from a legal standpoint, what do they do?
Yeah, and as much as I feel like this is a personal liberty issue, but it's kind of not. It seems like something that an insurer might be really happy to see get mandated as standard equipment, because it makes it a little bit easier to place blame. Mm-hmm. I guess so. If there is an incident, they can say it wasn't our insured, it was your insured, or there's data there, and also the vehicle itself won't allow the human to do things that are going to be outside of the sort of accepted realm of normal behavior, right? It's protecting people from themselves, mostly so that insurance doesn't have to pay out.
But so would our insurance premiums go down then?
No.
More likely that people that have older cars that don't have this technology in it, their insurance premiums will go up.
Right. But I mean, it was kind of a rhetorical question anyway.
I'd pay them. That's fine.
It's like, increasingly today you have usage-based insurance, where insurance companies will give you a little dongle that you plug into the OBD2 port, to monitor your driving behavior. And if you agree to use one of those and share the information, they'll give you a discount on your premiums.
Right.
A few years from now, it's going to be the reverse. It's, if you don't get one of those, then they'll raise your rates.
It's fine. I'll pay more. And it's not even because I want to drive recklessly. It's more just I just don't like the intrusion and just the vast reams of data that have been proven to be pretty insecure. Because the driving data is going to be tied to you. It's going to be individualized because otherwise, how are they going to set a rate?
Well, and again, that's one of the issues with the current systems that are out there is that they don't actually know who's driving.
Well, I mean, it's just tied to the owner, I guess. It's just tied to a subscriber, the policy
right.
holder.
But there may be multiple users of that vehicle, and they don't necessarily know who's in there and who to tie that information to.
When you have driver monitoring with a camera, they can look at the driver and just store it in the EDR, open and shut.
Yep. Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Or the biometrics of starting the car with your thumbprint.
Yeah, that's another way.
None of that. I don't even like the idea where you can unlock the car with your phone. No.
I'm sticking with my 29-year-old.
Yeah, and it's again, it's not because I don't like progress. It just seems like some of this stuff is like the unlock the car with the phone thing. Like that's just okay because you can, and it is like you have the device on you at all times. That's great, but then like what happens when you lose it or the battery's dead or whatever? You're still gonna have the backup way to get into the car because those things are gonna happen.
That's why you had the thumbprint or the fingerprint one.
Yeah, and that's okay, I suppose. I'm not sure how that would do in cold weather. They'll solve all those problems with it. This one, though, was just the driver data and the driver monitoring and the sort of the heavy restrictions around it. It seems to me you're going to run into the law of unintended consequences where like you actually do need to break the speed limit to avoid a situation at some point, and you're not going to be able to. And so again, like Sam was saying, like what's the buffer you allow in there, the wiggle room, and who knows at this point? They'll figure it out.
Yeah,
keep my old car.
Keep that Crown Vic handy.
Yeah. Yes. This never thought I'd want to. Anyway, we had some questions.
You want to hit a couple of Twitter questions? All right. So first one from the Car Guy for All on Twitter. Yes. First of all, he says, "Will we please stop dancing around our feelings on Tesla? We will try to not couch our thoughts on Tesla and be more frank,
take a stronger stand,
and open about how we feel about them. And then also, can a good drivetrain overcome a vanilla car anymore, or does the drivetrain not matter as much in the current marketplace? This is indirectly in reference to the CT5.
I would like to introduce you to the Dodge Challenger Hellcat.
Yeah. Or the Cadillac CTS-V or ATS-V.
Yeah. It can, depending on the car and the individual.
Yeah. Agreed. Any thoughts, Rebecca?
No, I think I agree with you guys. I think that it's still absolutely critical. So I think that there's still, obviously you don't want to have a very vanilla car, but I think that the drivetrain still is very, very important in the current marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, once we get to EVs, then there's going to be a lot less differentiation there. But as long as we still have internal combustion engines, they do add a certain degree of character. Regardless of how boring the rest of the car might be, if you have a great powertrain in there, it can add a lot of character.
Well, I mean, the prime example. Not to go off in too far of a tangent, but the prime example of that is something like the Porsche Boxster, that for years was not terribly powerful, but it had a very distinctive flat six that not everybody else had, and so it was certainly an experience, and it had a sound and a power delivery, and its performance usually belied its numbers. It actually put up better performance than you'd expect. And it's changed now because they've got the Turbo 4s, which are another kind of thing. But certainly those cars on paper aren't as impressive as they are on pavement.
Yeah. All right. Next one's from David Harbin. It says, can I complain about inappropriate exhaust systems? Cars with inline fours should not have fake dual exhaust. Only cars with more than one bank of cylinders. I know, old man yelling at the cloud in the age of Tesla, but I reserve my right to rant. P.S. I also get annoyed when people say their BMW has a V6.
So I'm going to push back a little bit on this only because I think that, we've downsized in the day and age of fuel economy standards, but some of these four cylinders are really good. I mean, I never would have, or inline fours, I never would have expected to like something like this, but some of them are really good. And so, I think it's okay to have the dual exhaust.
Yeah, I agree. I think dual exhaust in and of itself, I don't have an issue with, and I think it's perfectly reasonable to have a dual exhaust with a 4-cylinder engine. And in fact, the idea that the number of exhausts should match the number of banks or anything like that, I think is kind of an arbitrary thing. Prime example is the Honda Civic Type R, which actually is a 4-cylinder turbo. It has 3 exhaust outlets, two on either side, and a big one in the middle. Well, it's a multi-mode exhaust system.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So there's stuff coming out at different times depending on what the load is on the engine and everything. There's exhaust going to be coming out of different tips. But I would definitely agree that there are cases where where you certainly have fake exhaust tips on there that are not connected to anything.
Yes.
That are just there. I mean, you'll have cars that will have what looks like a quad exhaust, and then when you get under and look, you'll see that it may even be a dual, but the two outer ones, or two inner, two of them, one of the tips on either side is just a dummy, and it doesn't actually do anything at all. And I remember one of the first ones I remember seeing like that in early 90s on the Pontiac Grand Am. They did that. They had 4 exhaust tips, and 2 of them were completely dummies.
Well, but okay. So most of the time when they're there like that, it's for design symmetry. So would you complain if it had an asymmetric exhaust where it's just a single outlet on one side and so it looks less balanced?
And that's worse.
I honestly,
I think from a design aesthetic, I like to have it symmetrical.
Yeah, I think the symmetry is probably more pleasing to more people. And
but this goes beyond symmetry. Okay, so I mean, this was a dual exhaust system, but they had outlets on both sides of the car, but they had 2 outlets on each side, and one of the 2 on either side was a dummy. So you had one functional one and one dummy on either side.
It's only going to get more obvious as you put some miles on the car, too. One's going to get dirty and the other's going to stay perfectly clean.
Right. Or it's going to rust and, going to be hanging off, halfway off, things like that.
Yeah, I get it. I do think that the restriction to duals, though, like you can certainly have an inline engine with dual exhaust. That's one of the ways you get performance out of the Slant 6, for example, is you keep them, you pick 3 and you separate those 3 as far back as you can, and it makes that engine actually make a lot more power. It makes it breathe a lot better. So there are reasons to put it doesn't have to be like a V or a horizontally opposed engine, so you've got 2 banks of cylinders and that's the only reason for duals. Like it's a common reason, but it's not the only reason. So,
and in some cases, it's a matter of trying to achieve a certain kind of sound, and even if you're not doing synthetic sound, as BMW has become fond of doing in recent years, even for a natural sound, it's still something that gets tuned. There are engineers at automakers that spend a lot of time working on the exhaust system to tune it to provide a particular kind of note depending on, the type of car it is and the type of engine it is. And even from a 4-cylinder engine with a single turbo, where there's nominally one exhaust pipe coming out of that turbocharger, and then feeding into a dual exhaust system, that might be done to achieve a certain type of sound.
Yeah, that's true, because the whole system is one big Helmholtz resonator, and you can have chambers on it too. That's the muffler itself is a chamber, and you're basically tuning the frequency at which it resonates, and then as you change the speed of the engine, you're changing the frequency and everything. Yeah, it's a good time. There's a lot of science that goes into it, and you're tuning it with the exhaust system. You're tuning the way it sounds on the outside of the car, where the artificial sound that BMW and Ford do on the like over the speakers, that's on the inside. And I guess that is so that you can actually make the car meet noise regulations a lot more easily and less expensive, and still give you some of that thrill. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it varies. In some cases, a lot of times, they'll use active noise cancellation, especially with 4-cylinder engines, to cancel out some of the boomy sounds at low RPMs, to get rid of some of those, because those sounds are genuinely unpleasant. And if you can get rid of those, then with electronics, I don't have a complaint about that.
I just don't like the fake engine sounds. If I wanted a video game, I'd stay home. All right. And that's it. And Jarrett Henshaw just wanted us to talk about Geely and Smart, which we already did. If you missed it, Jarrett, just rewind about half an hour. It's all there. All right. Well, and I think in terms of being all there too, episode 103 is all there. So let's wrap it up, and we'll see everybody next week.
All right.
Sounds great.
Bye.
Bye.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.